The other day, I get a phone call back, and I'm just elated it's an actual human calling me back. And she starts explaining that she's got another phone number for me to call in regard to making the official appointment. And I realize more or less halfway through our conversation, I have no idea which person she's talking about as far as making an appointment. I don't know if it's me. I don't know if it's my kids. I have no idea what we're even talking about. I was so happy that a human called me back on the phone in a timely fashion because I knew it was timely because she said, I just received your message. And I thought, this is great. But then I realized I have no idea who we're talking about or what this is in regard to. So I finally apologize and interrupt her and say, I am so sorry, but what is this for? Like, which person? Is it myself? Is it one of my kids? Or in what? What are we talking about? She said, Nikki, this is Gabby. I see you when you come in to see the doctor, and this is for the surgery on your ankle. And I was kind of embarrassed, and I thought, oh my God, I am so sorry. And I apologized profusely. I said, I am just crazy. And she then told me, Nikki, you're not crazy. You're very special. And I burst out laughing and I thought, oh my gosh, thank you for that. Thank you, Gabby, for that. God, that is a great way to look at it. Though it's probably debatable if I'm crazy or not. And I think my therapist would say otherwise. I'm Nikki Lynn Chase, and this is my podcast, Adult Chicken, and it's about navigating life's unexpected. This is my journey and my stories about why I require so much therapy as a single mom to two special needs kids. I was always a pessimist when it came to therapists. The ones that I knew, especially growing up and later in life, anybody I knew who had gone into that profession, it's kind of debatable how much therapy they required, or did they go into that profession because they required so much? And I felt like the majority of them were kind of crazy themselves. And again, isolated to my knowledge of people I knew going into the field. But I also had watched my parents go to marriage counseling or a therapist for repair of their marriage. And I remember, and I was little, I was probably, or I was young, I was about 12, maybe 13, and they'd gotten separated. And they were going to marriage counseling because that's what you did. Everyone kind of stuck it out. I don't think I knew very many people who had parents who were divorced. And I'll never forget my parent. They had obviously been to therapy, and my parents came home, and maybe the topic of conversation must have been my mom must have requested that my dad was more affectionate, or the therapist had suggested my dad be more affectionate because they were trying to have a moment in the kitchen, and they hated each other. They'd always hated each other. I'd never seen them actually be nice to one another. And my dad tried to give my mom a kiss on the cheek, and it was the most awkward, of course embarrassing because they were my parents, but it wasn't just because they were my parents. It didn't work. Like, they didn't work like that. They weren't those kind of people. They didn't have that kind of relationship. And all I thought in my head was, what the hell is wrong with this person trying to counsel these two into being together? I knew at that young age, even though most kids want their parents to work it out, I'm like, why? Like, they literally can't stand each other. And then when they proceeded to get divorced, and I figured that kind of proved that point there, that it was not beneficial. Well, then I started looking into like support groups where you would go and find kind of counseling. And I tried to convince, I wasn't aware of what they really did, but I found this, it was something for adult, or maybe like an alcoholic anonymous type of support group, but it was for the kids of alcoholics. And I didn't understand the whole premise. So it was something I wanted my mom, I really wanted to fix my mom. I wanted to fix her drinking problem. And so my college years, like my high school and college years, I thought I could fix that. I didn't quite understand it was something that I had no control over, and it was completely 1,000% her, and she put it on me. So I really owned it, and I thought that was something I was responsible for and for fixing. And I kind of looked into those, and I was just wary because I looked at these situations and I didn't find it helpful, definitely not for myself, because I thought I'm not going to go to these things and listen to other people's stories about their sort of sad situations with alcoholic parents. I didn't find that helpful, not for me and not the way I did. So I don't know. I just had this very strange idea of what therapy was like. Well, I went briefly when my marriage had started going to shit in a handbasket. I thought, you know what, I'll go to a therapist and I'm just going to disclose everything. I don't want to go over the whole your past and divulging into all that you grew up with, but I just am going to go find somebody who can sort of, I'll be honest, I'll give them the true details and then they'll be able to fix it. Very naive, I guess, when it came to that. So I went and saw the sort of the town therapist. And as I'm sitting there kind of telling her my various little secrets, I start thinking in my head, going, there aren't very many therapists in town. And in fact, I don't know of any others than this one. And this lady knows all the people I'm talking about, all the parties that this is a really small town. And I started getting really uncomfortable thinking she was kind of the town therapist and who she wasn't therapitizing, she was friends with her. Mostly it was a very, very interconnected little place there. And I thought, the hell am I doing? Like, this isn't, I don't feel like this is my safe or comfort zone. And she made a mention. It was a compliment, but she said something about how she noticed in our first session that I seemed pretty resourceful and kind of had it like she was kind of threw it back on me and said, I think you know what you need to do. In hindsight, I think she was just saying, run, get away. But I don't know. It wasn't a good fit, and my pessimism sort of continued to follow suit. And so, fast forward to the kids being Bootsy had started middle school, and Sandler, I think she was in her second year actually of middle school, and Sandler was in elementary school. And so many things had gone on. And I think I'd lived so many years just in survival mode that I hadn't stopped to think about what had been going on. It was my day had been filled with riding a bike for the entire time they were in school to get my chores done, get grocery shopping done, doing laundry with a bike cart. And, it was kind of getting from A to B and establishing different doctor's appointments, getting their specialists and whatnot. So it was really just survival mode for years. And then once we got a car and once we were in a sort of a different living situation and they were in the schools, we had kind of set up our resources as far as education and medical went. Started realizing that's when it kind of hit me that, whew, you know, there's a lot to process here. There's a lot going on. Like, you are a mom of two special needs kids. There's a lot that goes with that. There's a lot that goes with parenting anyway. And then when I quit drinking, that's when I was like, shit, like I've got to talk this out. I've got to numb this down. And with the kibosh of my drinking, a lot of my drinking buddies were, it kind of changed up my dynamic of friends I hung out with, or what I did when I had a minute to myself, or to hang out with people. There's just a lot of thinking time. I think a lot anyway. And I hit this point where I really felt like I was losing my shit. Like there was too much. There were too many, I'm not kind to myself. There's so much guilt that comes from, my upbringing, my evil, nasty mom, just the way the absence of the same old crap everybody has, just the growing up, the parents, the parentals, you name it, everything that goes back. And that was another reason I never wanted to get into therapy. I thought, it's pretty obvious. I've never been quiet about how my parents, and I've never been blinded by how my upbringing was, or, I felt like I got that dialed in. what's there to go over? Like, I felt like if I went to therapy, they'd want to talk about my past. And I have always been a very much carpe diem, live in the moment type of person. Forget the past. What's in the rear view mirror is in the rear view mirror. And I got to a point where I thought, I think kind of need to talk to somebody. And I was having a long conversation with a friend of mine who had a classmate who was in Bootsy's class and also special needs, of course. And it was the look on her face. And then she goes, Nikki, I think you could really see a psychologist. I think it would be helpful for you. And when somebody kind of suggests that, you know that there's something, whatever air you're giving off is presenting something to the universe that's saying, oh, help me, I'm drowning. And so she gave me the name of her therapist. And I finally bit the bullet. And I was like, I'm going to call this guy. And he didn't take my insurance, but came highly recommended. So I was like, you know what? And he was cool. He was willing to work with me and let me kind of pay what I could. So I was paying out of pocket. And I liked it. I liked talking to somebody that wasn't involved in, I liked talking to he was a parent, but he wasn't a parent of a special needs kid. I liked that perspective. I liked that he had nothing to do with my life. He didn't know the people I had grown up with. He didn't know the entire town. He wasn't therapizing the entire town I was immersed in. And it was great. It was kind of like a really expensive coffee date. I felt like I could go, sort of just put it all out there and just alleviate a little bit of pressure to hold it all in and just kind of hear an outsider's perspective and just, I don't know, talk shit about myself, talk shit about the people that had affected my life and come home and be done with it. And that was more or less what it was. Well, summers have always stressed me out because that's when we don't have routine. And I'm leading into probably, maybe it's the first full summer of I'm not drinking, which was sort of terrifying to me because that was a real stress reliever. That was okay. Whew. Just there's no routine. The kids are always home. Oh my God, I'm going to pour a glass of wine or I'm going to have myself a nice cold beer, just to take the edge off. And it's summer and I maybe just right about after 4th of July and I'm in the heat of my panic. And oh my gosh, we still have several weeks left of no routine and I've got to, keep myself together. And a lot of what I had been talking to the therapist about, of course, had been all of the trauma, and a lot had been about the stalking events in my life. It had been about the kid's terrifying father. It had been about the accounts that I had had in Tacoma with the stalker. It had been about, just obvious trust issues I had with people in general, and of course, issues with men or people, authority figures that I had in my family. And sure enough, it's a summer evening and I'm just trying to get through the night, get the kids to bed, and we're having a little sit down on our patio and I'm feeding them maybe an early dinner, trying to convince them that it's bedtime when the sun is still shining, but I'm over the day. And down our street, and we live on a very, very secluded, kind of tucked away little street. You kind of really have to know where you're going to find us. Most people who I give detailed directions to have a hard time finding where we are located. But I mean, as I'm serving up whatever item I could find in the cupboard, I look and I see a lone biker coming. I'm thinking it must be a neighbor because we only ever get neighbors in our little area. And they're on a bike, and as they proceed to get closer, I realize it's my therapist, I think. And I think, no way, there's no way that's that's not my therapist. That would be very weird, very strange. Certainly didn't have an agreement for like a house call or something. And I It's comes kind of slowly, but there's a definite like eye contact, head nod. And I would have been able to play off in my head, like, no, no, you're seeing things. I have recognition issues. I don't typically know who people are, or I have to really, like, my memory has to be jarred. If it's out of context, I don't recognize. And that, no, I'm pretty sure that's who that was. And then Bootsy said, Mommy, why is Dr. Stan driving by on his bike? And it was when I heard her say it and know that she recognized him. I kind of stopped in my tracks, and I was like, I that was weird, right? Like that was who that was. And so that week I had my one of my expensive coffee dates planned, and I went in and I thought, okay, he's the professional. I'll let him kind of handle how I don't really know. I have not been in that situation before, and I'm sure he'll just address it and we'll carry on and it'll be fine. And it wasn't addressed, and there was some odd small talk, and it got kind of uncomfortable for me. I don't think he was uncomfortable, but it got very uncomfortable for me. And I thought, what the hell were you doing driving or riding your bike by my home? Like, that's weird. And it made me uncomfortable. And it brought back all my pessimism. And I think that's very strange that you would come by my house in my personal space, and not to mention, I pay you in cash to listen to all my secrets. I'm not sure what I've left up to the imagination or why the hell you're rolling by my house. And if it was like a coincidence, I'm not sure why we're not bringing it up or, addressing the elephant in the room. And it made me very uncomfortable. And so I quickly got back out of therapy and thought, all of it's been proven. All of my questions and my suspicions about those weirdos, it's been confirmed. Forget therapy, forget psychology. It's a waste of time, and the crazies are the ones giving out the secrets. And so, not another thought, like just a wary again of another profession I just wanted nothing to do with. Well, then months go by because it was that same year, and that's when my mom died, and then the car accident happens, and then the anxiety of driving hits me. So after the car accident, I realized I needed to get myself back into therapy, and I needed to get back behind the wheel and be able to feel some level of comfort and confidence again, because it was destroyed. I couldn't get through an intersection without just about losing my shit. So I found a therapist, and this one took my insurance, so it wouldn't be out of pocket. It wouldn't be just an expensive coffee date. I went with the intention of a goal to get rid of this driving anxiety and to get into my car comfortably and confidently again. So I find a therapist who takes my insurance, and he seems to focus on all the things that are most important to me. And I do find myself voluntarily disclosing different things about my past and my childhood and my parents, but mostly the focus is the anxiety from the car accident. But then I also start realizing as I'm talking and running my mouth to this particular therapist that, wow, a lot of my childhood, a lot of my past has everything to do with this anxiety. A lot of this anxiety obviously comes from my driving, but I had a lot of this before the accident. And he started comparing me to people who had been through wars. And I felt humbled by that, of course, but I also felt like I wasn't worthy of such a comparison. But when he started making me realize that I had lived in a constant state of fight or flight, I had severe PTSD, not only from the car accident, but from my childhood and from my past with the person I had married. And that was much bigger than anything, a revelation, if you will. And I thought, oh my gosh, you're right. In fact, he compared me to, there's a movie And I had not seen the movie, but he said, "You remind me of the guy," and I forget at this point what the name of the movie is, but where he diffuses bombs and he goes in and he'll go in whistling. They'll evacuate an entire town for miles, and he'll go in whistling or chewing gum or something and diffuse a bomb. But then he goes to the grocery store and he completely loses his shit at the grocery store and flips out. And I was like, oh my gosh, I kind of always thought therapists had like a magic recipe for how they fix people. You've just gotten my magic recipe. You just gotten my life. That's exactly how I feel. Like I can handle this big crazy stuff. I can handle they're going to say, "Well, your son's not doing well," or "Here's a car accident." And I can kind of walk through the motions and get through that in this really weird calm way. But it comes to the grocery store, and that's always where I lose my shit. I had recently, just before that, gone to the grocery store. I remember it vividly. I was in the coffee section and was trying to pick out coffee, and the kids were doing something. I found it very annoying. They always drive me nuts at the grocery store. And all of a sudden, I couldn't pick out the coffee. I got overwhelmed. I freaked out and screamed, "I hate being a mother." I was like, the hell, you freaking psycho. Like, who yells, "I hate being a mother" at the flippin' grocery store while you're picking out coffee? The kids didn't have anything to do with the fact that you didn't know what kind of coffee you wanted. And I thought, this guy's got my number. Like, there were different weird triggers, and I wasn't recognizing those things. Well, little more time on the couch, and I'm voluntarily discussing more and more about my childhood. And he's starting to connect the dots for me and explain to me that, well, why wouldn't you have chosen the person you chose to marry when he sounds like an extension of your mom? You know, he doesn't sound much different, and there's such thing. You've heard it before. The sort of it built-in nature to repeat history, if you will. There's this built-in way that you're comfortable. You've been comfortable in this constant state of survival. You've been comfortable in the fight or flight zone. And it's not shocking you married somebody that was so much like your parental figure, because that was your comfort zone, to be ridiculed, to be abused, to be physically and emotionally abused. That's not that different. When my mom was on her demise and dating nothing but these horrible alcoholic, these extremely abusive people, I had no choice but to be witness to it. And although it was disgusting and awful, and I knew every minute of those moments were wrong and there was nothing okay about it, I grew comfortable with that. That's what I grew to know as, that's, well, I guess that's what she expects. That's what she chose. That's what she expected. So I went into this marriage going, well, I know what to expect. And it was exactly what I expected. And it just continued to get worse. And so my comfort, I guess my threshold and my tolerance built. So it was, as it was getting excessively worse, I was kind of growing more and more comfortable with it. And then finally, I broke the cycle. And I didn't realize that that's what I had done by leaving and getting my kids out of that situation. I'd broken the cycle, and I kind of changed the course of my life. And I definitely changed my kids' course. And that was something I should celebrate, instead of just what haven't I done and what haven't I accomplished and how could I have been so stupid to have married somebody that was such a carbon copy of my mother. And the truth is, that made sense all of a sudden. And I thought, this guy is good. And then he had suggested, you can, as you can imagine, he doesn't get a word in edgewise very often, but when he does, it is the most profound, helpful tool. And I don't miss anything he says, and I do apply each and everything that he says to my life. And I found somebody with the background, the knowledge, and the education to help me identify what was essentially continuing to fuck up my life. And a lot of it was me, and work with what I was doing and change how I was doing things. And it's extraordinary because now I'm not in a constant state of anxiety. I'm always anxious about something. But in comparison, when I back up and I compare myself now to where I was years ago, I think, holy cow, like, what a difference. I'm not, you know, survival, of course, keeping my kids healthy, safe, and happy. Those are the top three priorities. And, but I kind of made those my priorities too. And the interesting thing is, it's very different. Before, it was when I was living in the constant survival mode and fight or flight mode and in my own war zone that I had essentially sort of come out of after being raised like that for all those years, and then put myself right back into with my relationship with the kid's father, being out of that. And now for so long, it's adjustment, and it's crazy adjustment. I'll have these anxiety, these epic panic attacks. Something will have triggered it, and I have no idea why. I don't even know why I'm feeling that way. And it's almost just like I've gone back to a comfortable place. But now it's telling of how uncomfortable it's become, which is a beautiful thing. And he has recommended several books, and I everything he usually, minus the meditation, I never did quite get into that. I found my closest meditative state to what everybody I think is talking about when they meditate. I find it on a skateboard, which is very odd. And I call skateboarding sort of the meditation or yoga for spazzy people, because that's the only time I've ever gotten into that, the closest to that zone, if you will, I think I've gotten to. But of course, that's on hiatus right now, and running too, because I have this wonky ankle I'm waiting to have surgery on. But I'll return to that, and I have tried to adjust and find some new outlets that have kind of gotten close to that, if you will. But there's also been some homework involving some books that he has suggested, and I've bought every one of them, because I do believe, for the most part, our relationship, the patient therapist relationship, is so that he really gets what I will benefit from. So the one I really liked, and it's the name of it has completely escaped me. The author has completely escaped me. It was a military person, and the one thing I got out of it, because I didn't read the entire thing, was make your bed every day. And I did just that. I started that. I thought, that's one thing I can do. I can do it. And I realized it was, you've accomplished something. And that was the whole premise of, from a military perspective, get up and make your bed. Very rarely find the time with the two kids and our crazy schedule to read a book. But that was the one that stuck out the most. And then I'll find something and I'll suggest it to him. And the one I more recently did, one of my best friends in the entire world sent me a book close to Christmas time, I guess it was, called The Gift by Edith Eger. And she is an author, also a psychologist, who survived Auschwitz. And when I got it in the mail, I thought, Heather forgot I don't ever get a chance to read books, let alone self-help books. Oh my God. But I vowed to read it, and I did. And it was one of those I then put on my list of, this is a book I should literally read every 6 weeks. It's something, and I highlighted it and I underscored it, and it was something that I got so much out of. So today's special edition, I'm just going to read a few quotes from Edith Edgar. And the book that I read that I enjoyed immensely is The Gift, and I would recommend it to anybody. I think that for me, it was just an extremely useful tool. And here are a few of Edith Edgar quotes that I find to be ones that I constantly revisit. To forgive is to grieve for what happened, for what didn't happen, and to give up on the need for a different past. Perfectionism is a belief that something is broken. So you dress up your brokenness with degrees, achievements, accolades, pieces of paper, none of which can fix what you think you are fixing. Just remember, she says, no one can take away from what you have put in your mind. Here you are, the sacred present. I can't heal you or anyone, but I can celebrate your choice to dismantle the prison in your mind, brick by brick. You can't change what happened. You can't change what you did or what was done to you. But you can choose how you live now. My precious, you can choose to be free. It's the first time I see that we have a choice to pay attention to what we've lost or pay attention to what we still have. And lastly, the only place where we can exercise our freedom of choice is in the present. Please tune in, like, and subscribe. If you subscribe to Apple Podcasts, you will get a reminder every week that the new episode is ready and available to listen to. Also, you can find me on Spotify, YouTube, and adultchicken.com. That's where the homepage is, and that will also give you the links to go to all the various platforms where you can find Adult Chicken Podcast. Stay tuned next week for episode number 11, which will be all about my pseudo relatives, which are even more colorful than my own relatives, as well as the relatives I wish I were related to, whom I named my children after.